I always get excited to shoot the AK. There's just something really satisfying about this design. 7.62 by 39 is a hard-hitting cartridge, and it's just a fun gun to shoot, and it's got a lot of character. But is the WASR still the best quote-unquote budget AK on the market today? Mine's an old one, but it sure still does run. Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Sawtooth Tactical, and this is my AK, and I absolutely love my AK. This is a WASR 1063. Now, when I first started looking into AKs, I thought that the WASR was like the poor man's AK, and in a way, it kind of is. But with a lot of American companies making AKs these days, the WASR has kind of gained notoriety as a reliable but affordable option from comm-block countries, which is where AKs come from. And so I think that there's something important about that. When I wanted to get an AK, I wanted to get a comm-block AK. The WASR is made in Romania. This one specifically, 1967. So we're going to talk all about it. Make sure you're subscribed, and let's begin. Overgassed and outdated compared to my ARs, but something about shooting this, it just has more character. The first thing that I want to say is that I just love the AK for the vibes. And I love shooting the AK. There's something just different about it. So obviously I love ARs. I've got a bunch of them behind me, and I've got more that aren't even in the frame right now. ARs are fantastic guns. But this video isn't about ARs. I only have one AK, and I do need to change that because AKs are awesome. But I specifically bought the AK, honestly, for the looks. I think that it is just one of the coolest looking guns that there is. It's got a very classic aesthetic. It was one of the original assault rifles. Now, don't get mad at me for saying that. This one is not an assault rifle. This is a semi-automatic AK. Assault weapon is a made-up turn by the left. Assault rifle is a select fire rifle, meaning fully automatic capabilities, chambered in an intermediate cartridge. This one is not that, but the actual real full auto AK technically is. So before you get mad at me for that, Kalashnikov designed a very effective rifle and a very cool rifle, and it's been used in so many conflicts all over the world. It's a rifle that everyone recognizes. It's on Mozambique's flag, for God's sakes. It's got history, and it's got character, and it's got that look. And that was the biggest thing, the biggest driving force for me to get an AK, is I just thought they looked cool, and I felt like I needed to own one as a gun owner. And I'm really glad that I do. And I specifically went out looking for a classic looking AK. Wood furniture, fixed stock, 16-inch barrel, slant brake, cleaning rod. The classic look, 7.62 by 39 with the big curved magazine. This was the kind of AK that I was looking for. And my gun store happened to have one. And it's a used one, or it was a used one. It's very used now. But when I bought it, this was used. And it's the only used gun I've ever bought. But with an AK, I felt like that was a safe move. Because they're just known to be reliable. People have pulled them out of rivers and out of mud after, decades, and thrown a magazine in, and they run like they did on the day that they were built. And so I felt like a used AK was an okay decision to make. And when my gun store had this one in, and it didn't look pretty, it looked kind of old and beat up and like it had been through war. Honestly, it was exactly what I was looking for. A Romanian WASR 1063 might not be the prettiest AK in the world, but for an AK, I think that's kind of cool. And she sure does run. So why the WASR? Like I said, American companies make a lot of AKs now. Now, of course, you can get an Arsenal or you can get an Izmash or something really expensive and honestly really good, but you're going to spend a lot more money. A WASR is going to be closer to the same price that you pay for an American AK. And the American AK is probably going to look nicer and just overall be smoother and shinier. So why get a WASR? So I'm a member of AK groups on Facebook. And when a lot of people join those groups and they're asking which AK to get for their first AK, the overwhelming majority of answers are a WASR. Not a PSA, not a Kalashnikov USA, which I believe they actually just went out of business, which is unfortunate. I think it's a good thing that American companies are making AKs and that they're making this platform more accessible to people. Hopefully, that means that it'll bring back more 7.62x39 into the country. But I think if you want to get an AK in 5.45, yes. And even these days in 5.56. Now, a WASR is going to be a 7.62x39 AK. It's made in Romania in the Kuzir factory. It has been for a long time. And that factory makes Romania's actual military rifles. And that's what the WASR 1063 is. It is made of those same military rifle parts. And to me, that's an even cooler part of owning a WASR 1063. Now, I don't know if you can get a WASR 1063 specifically anymore, except for on the used market, but you can still buy a WASR 10. I see them all the time on websites for sale. And it's basically this same gun. It's got different wood furniture. Honestly, I think the wood furniture that comes on the new WASRs is not nearly as cool as the laminate that comes on this. And don't get me wrong, this isn't any kind of fancy wood by any means. Laminate basically means plywood. But it looks like what an AK should look like, in my opinion. And that's kind of the whole point of it. You know, this AR right here is like so nice. This is not. But that's kind of the point. That's what I love about it. Now, the only thing that I don't love about the WASR look is that it doesn't have the dimple above the magwell. Most other AKs have a dimple right here. The Romanian WASR does not. Now, it's funny because that same factory makes the Draco, and the Draco has the dimple. Instead, what they do is they weld some pieces of steel in here to make that magwell stronger. And that's just part of the design of the WASR. Now, why have I kept it like this and not modernized it like I do with my ARs? Well, again, it just goes back to the style. I think it's really cool this way. I do want to do a modern AK, but I think that if I do, I'm going to do one with a shorter barrel because I don't know if you can tell, but I like short barrels. Although if you had a 16 and a 14.5 behind me, I also got an 11.5 and a really short 300 blackout. And I think a short AK would be really cool. I'd love to get a crank, and PSA is making cranks now. So we might have to do that at some point in the future on this channel. But again, this video is about this WASR. And why do you buy an AK besides for the style and the looks and the history and everything else? Well, you buy it for reliability. And this thing is damn reliable. I shoot almost exclusively steel-cased ammo out of this. You know, cheap Tula, which unfortunately is not that cheap anymore. In fact, if you can find steel-cased 7.62x39 for less than what brass-cased 55 grain 5.56 cost these days, you're lucky. And that was one of the cool parts about getting an AK before, was being able to run this cheap steel-cased ammo. You could shoot all day and it didn't cost you a whole lot of money. Well, that's not really the case anymore, which is a really unfortunate thing. But again, going back to PSA, their AAC ammo, which actually I don't have any AAC ammo right in front of me, but I buy tons of their 9mm. It's good ammo. Well, they just came out with their steel case 7.62x39, which makes sense. They make a lot of AKs and they want their customers to be able to shoot the guns that they buy from them. So they have to support those guns with ammo manufacturing. And I think that that is great. And I think that that is hopefully going to make people want to get into AKs more again once the ammo becomes more available. Because as you might know, there is a ban on Russian ammo currently. Now, there were already all kinds of import contracts in place. And so all of those are still viable. And so ammo has still been coming in. But I've been seeing it less and less. And it's gotten more and more expensive. I still have a few hundred rounds of this Tula left that I've been going through. I've been buying this Ammo Incorporated 7.62x39. Basically whatever I can find that's at a decent price, because I just loving running the AK, even if it's not cheaper to shoot than an AR anymore. It's got a very, very satisfying recoil impulse to it. Now, it definitely recoils more than a 5.56 AR. And that has to do with a few things. For one thing, these are generally way overgassed. This one is. I do run this brake on it at times. And that does help to control the recoil very effectively. But I also just think that the slant brake that comes on it looks cooler. So I leave that on a lot of the time because, like I said, a big part of owning this rifle for me is the looks. And I like that classic look. This always seems to happen whenever I bring out the AK. It just hits harder than 5.56, 223, 9mm, or 300 blackout. Every time it either knocks targets over or it totally destroys them. But let's talk about reliability and accuracy, because AKs are known for reliability, but not so much for accuracy. And I think that that's a little bit of, not necessarily true. So when I bought this gun, it actually wasn't that reliable. It is now. So, and that's the thing. Like I said, I bought it used. And I have no idea how many rounds were put through this thing. Judging by the looks of it, probably thousands. The barrel's not shot out, which is good. And we're going to talk about accuracy in a second. But I think that the hammer spring had worn out. Now, the trigger and hammer spring are one spring in an AK. And in fact, I'll do this off screen, but so that you can see it in there. So that spring right there that wraps around the trigger and the hammer and everything, it might have been a little worn out. I'm not sure if that was the problem or if it was the firing pin kind of just getting a little bit smushed and mushroomed at the tip, or just kind of shortened from a zillion rounds. But I replaced the firing pin and that spring, and it's been 100% reliable ever since. And AKs are just that way. That firing pin might have worn out, but once it was replaced with a decent one, this thing has been perfectly ever since. You can run it without the dust cover on it if you really wanted to. I mean, people have put all kinds of crap inside their AKs, and they still just run. You can run the cheapest, dirtiest ammo steel case, and they just run. And in fact, they're designed to run steel cased ammo, which again was one of the cool things. You could run really cheap ammo in them. Although steel cased ammo, like I said, not as cheap as it used to be. But since replacing those two things, this thing has been 100%, not a single malfunction of any kind. And it's because AKs are just such a simple system. It's basically a big stamped steel box with this spring and a hammer and trigger assembly and a rotating bolt. It's got kind of loose tolerances. And instead of running on a direct gas impingement system like the AR-15, inside here there's a piston. In fact, let me show you that as well. So there's a gas piston here. That piston is impinged upon by the gases from the gas block. And that is what, slides your bolt back and forth. and makes your AK run. And it's just a very reliable system. So reliable, in fact, that a lot of AR manufacturers are going to a gas piston system these days. It is a proven system that works really, really well. It's hard to have problems with it. I am thinking about getting a K&S adjustable gas piston for this because it is overgassed. And it would be nice to kind of, just make it a softer shooting gun. And that wouldn't really change the look of the thing, which I love so much. Every gun owner should own an AK. There's just something about it. It's a piece of history. And while mine is an older one, you can still get a WASR 10 for less than $1,000. I think sometimes significantly less. And I promise you're going to enjoy it. Now, if you look at the WASR, it looks like something that's built in a factory in Eastern Europe, because it is. Their manufacturing techniques are different than manufacturing in the United States. But it just works. Again, like I said, stamped steel and rivets instead of like milled aluminum and plastic, wood furniture. It's got the trap door with the cleaning kit inside it in the back. It's got all of the classic stuff from, a late 1940s, 1950s weapon. This one is stamped 1967 on the bolt, trunnion, the receiver. It's all numbers matching. 1967 parts. And it still runs as good today as it did in 1967. And I think that everyone should own an AK. I think that the WASR 10 is probably a great way to go. From all of the people that I pay attention to that know about AKs more than I do, they still recommend the WASR 10. Now, the furniture on it doesn't quite have as much character as this old WASR furniture does, but you can swap that out really easily. The WASR is AKM pattern, so it'll take whatever stocks, handguards, really whatever aftermarket parts you want. I've seen a lot of people take a WASR 10 and fully modernize it and customize it out and make it into a very high-end kind of tactical weapon. Now that's not how mine is at all, and I'm going to keep mine very classic. But you can do that because it is the actual AKM pattern. It's not like the Serbian rifles, like the Zastavas and stuff, which are a different pattern of rifle that don't take the same parts. And because it takes all the AKM parts, like I said, I wanted to keep it classic looking, but I did put the ALG trigger in here. Now, ALG stands for Amy Lynn Geisley. It is Geisley's sister company, ran by Bill Geisley's wife. Geisley makes my favorite AR triggers, and ALG makes my favorite AK trigger. This thing breaks it less than 2 pounds, and it is extremely just smooth. It's a sweet trigger for an AK. And there's this thing called 922R compliance. So imported guns have to have a certain number of American-made parts in them. Well, you get a lot of those parts with the trigger group, and so many of them, this one included, come with a Tapco G2 trigger, or at least they used to. Well, I can tell you from experience, I took that Tapco trigger out and put this ALG in, and it's a night and day difference. So if you do go out and get yourself a WASR, get that ALG trigger. If you get any AKM, get that ALG trigger. It's going to make the biggest difference you can possibly imagine. Now, the other thing that people always say is K&S adjustable gas piston. So that might be the other thing that I do to this WASR. Other than that, I'm not sure I'm going to do anything else to it. It does come with the side mount optics rail here. So you can put one of the rails that goes over the top with Picatinny, put a red dot or a scope on it if you want. But I'm not even going to do that. And that kind of segues into accuracy. So I've only ever shot this thing with iron sights. Mainly because, like I said, the aesthetic, I just don't want to put a red dot on this. I just don't think it looks right. And for an iron sight gun, for a gun that when I look at it, it looks pretty straight. But these are famous for having canted sights. And people often talk about the AK as not being an accurate gun. Well, I've had no problems with the accuracy with these things. If I aim down my sights at the target and I do my part, it is as accurate as I can be. You know, ARs, yeah, inherently more accurate, and especially when you put modern optics and things on them and, you know, Geisley triggers and stuff. But I have had no issue with the accuracy with this old beat up AK. It's minute of man or whatever. At 100 yards, I can hit the target all day if I'm paying attention and doing my part. And I don't really plan to take a gun like this out past a couple 100 yards. I just don't really feel like that's what this gun is meant for. I've got other guns for that. While the old WASR 1063 might be a little bit rough around the edges, it is built like an absolute tank. And that's kind of what you buy an AK for. This thing is solid. If this falls over, falls off the bed of my truck, tailgate, whatever, I'm not worried about it. You know, if not that I'm worried about any of my guns. You know, guns are tools. They get beat up when you use them. But, you know, I don't necessarily want that one falling on the gravel. This one, I'm not worried about it. Is it going to get one more scratch? Who cares? And that's part of its charm as well. So I know I'm not really going into every little detail like a regular review would be, and I've done other videos in the past about my AK, but each one was a little bit more specific, I think. You know, it comes with all the stuff that you want. It has the cleaning rod here, which I think is part of the aesthetic, so you want that. It's got, you know, it comes with, in fact, it comes with a bayonet. Let me show you that real quick. Talk about classic look and styling. I mean, this is the only gun I have that I can throw a bayonet on. And it came with all this stuff when I bought it. That was the cool thing about getting a used gun. I mean, it came with like a zillion of these old, you know, steel surplus magazines. It came with a couple 100 rounds of ammo. Came with the bayonet, with a case, with all these different things. All for an expensive price. AKs are not cheap like they used to be, unfortunately. But I do still think that they're very worth it. And I think that every true gun owner should own an AK. Is it the gun that I would use, you know, in a world-ending zombie apocalypse situation? No, I'd pick that one. But would it be just fine in that situation? Absolutely, yes. It would keep shooting no matter what. It doesn't need as much, you know, lube and cleaning and just general maintenance. I'll be 100% honest, and there's a meme about this even, but I try to keep my ARs really clean. I do my best to clean them after each time I take them out and shoot them. I do my best with the AK too, but at the same time, sometimes I'll let this one go a bit longer just because I know that it can, and it doesn't seem to affect it. Whether I've cleaned it or oiled it recently, if I take it out and shoot it, it runs the same no matter what. And that's part of the thing about an AK. You know, it can be full of mud, water, whatever, and it's just gonna run. And the WASR especially is just known to be a reliable workhorse of a rifle. And so, you know, it's the same factory making the WASRs today as what made the parts for this one in 1967. And so I definitely recommend it. Yeah, can you get nicer AKs? Absolutely. Are you going to pay a lot more for them? Yeah. Can you get one that just has character and looks like an AK should and runs and runs and runs for less than $1,000 out of Romania? Yes, you can. And I think that is totally worth it. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Please let me know in the comments what kind of AK you have, if you have an AK, or what kind of AK you're looking to get if you don't, because everyone should have an AK. Share this video with any AK enthusiast that you may know. Make sure you subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical, and from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.